Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. Of course, I'm your host, BMR. Joining me from Missouri, my co-host, the lovely Brandy from the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Please subscribe to them if not already on YouTube. They've got a great show. They come on Thursday, 8 in the East, and Friday at 9 in the East, or it could be Thursday, 9 in the East, or Friday, 8 in the East. Brandy will have to sort through that when I pull her up. Thanks for coming on in. Got a great show. Brian Barber from my state of Michigan. He's a researcher. He had something happen to him back in 1987. Since 2000, I think 21. He's been, or 19, I think. He's been looking for the beast, for the creature. Gonna be a great show. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. The Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube. Texas Front Porch on YouTube. And of course, on Wednesdays, in Humanoids, Barton Nunnally. Got a great live show every Wednesday at 9. Check him out as well. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Spreaker Radio. Well, Spreaker's the podcast platform that we're now on. We're on like 20 different podcasts now, so check us out there. Thanks to Selene from KPNL Radio. We also live stream on her radio station. If you like what we provide you guys, if you like the content, the Super Chat's open. Super Chat is a great way to help support what we all do around here, so that is appreciated. Become a BMR pirate. Arr. Hit the join button. It's only $2.99. You get a little picture of me with a bandana. Be one of the select few to join the crowd. There's about 50 of you that are members. Thank you for that in advance. Check out our YouTube and About pages. It gives all our scheduled activities, what we do throughout the week, and a lot of things that we do have going on. is coming up, as you guys are probably well aware, those that tune in on a daily basis, a weekly basis, is June 7th and 8th, the Alabama Bigfoot Conference taking place in the Performing Arts Center in Anniston, Alabama. Get your tickets now, $30 online, $35 at the door. Check us out at BamaBigfootConference.com. The speaker lineup with Tex Weston is our host. Speakers Barton Donnelly, Daryl Denton, the Blondes and the Booze, Jason McLean, Greg Ogles, Martin Groves, and of course yours truly, BMR. Going to be fantastic. June 7th, we're having a meet and greet. The meet and greet's already booked, believe it or not. However, we will turn nobody away at the door. Again, go to the website for details on that. Thank you so much for that. Also, I'd like to thank everybody who's bought my book, Bigfoot Michigan Represents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1. It's found on Amazon. I pinned the link in the chat. You can also find it on my YouTube page. So thank you for that. When Amazon does come calling, for those of you that bought the book, leave a review. It does help analytics. It does help promote sales. And also, you might want to take advantage of the $12.99 pricing because I got a new one coming out in the spring, early summer. Book 2 is coming out. And due to printing, and this book is going to be about 50 or 60 more pages. So I might have to increase the price just a little bit, just to let you know. Just to let you know. So get this one hot off the press, $12.99. Thank you so much for that. With that being said, I'm going to bring up the lovely Brandy. Hey,
Hey, hey, happy
Brandy.
Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Always a great show. Always great when I can schedule you on with your
Well,
schedule. Email.
when I can get here, I sure am here.
Yes, you are. And we were just talking about the weather backstage with our guest Brian. You got
Yeah,
70 degrees in Missouri. We got 60 degrees here. Brian, who lives in the UP, well, Traverse City, has not had a drop of snow, which is quite unusual. And you know what? I woke up this morning. I was turned on my local news. I do watch the local news as kind of a talk show. And 1 million people woke up today with no cell phones. Everyone's cell phones went dark. Was that you? Were you one of
that
them?
was me. Yeah, I was one of them. I had nothing, nothing. My mother had nothing. I mean, where I live, I'm rural, so my Wi-Fi is kind of, it might as well be dial-up. So, I mean, I was like, okay, well, I just don't have it. I guess nobody can call me. That's okay.
Well, yeah, and I got rid of my landline several years ago because I had not used my landline for like anything ever. And
Right.
the only time I would get a call on my landline is from stupid marketing people.
Absolutely.
I
I
was,
hated those.
and I was paying like $10 a month to have a landline. I don't use it, so I canceled it. So today I went out walking like I do in the morning down by the creek area over here. My cell phone no service. I thought that was strange. So I did lose it for a little bit. When I got home, I had gotten it. And then I'm like, man, what's going I think that's something we got to look into, Randy, and just do a show on. Because I think there's something going on that's kind of maybe nefarious. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'm sitting there and and I'm thinking, okay, I have AT&T, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just
Yeah.
AT&T, but it wasn't. It wasn't. The people with Verizon and T-Mobile, they were all affected. So there may be something that wasn't said about this. So,
Yeah. I
you
don't,
know,
if you
it makes me
remember,
wonder.
it makes me wonder too, because if you do remember, maybe 2 months ago, it was on the news or whatever, and they told everybody before they went to bed to turn off your cell phones because there's going to be a big data breach or something. And if your phone was
Right,
on, it was going to be compromised by maybe China, Russia. I don't know, right? Well, I
right.
never did turn it off. Nothing happened. So I thought, oh, they're just propaganda. They're just trying to create these conspiracy theories. But now looking back at that, what happened today, I think that's something we should do a deep dive on maybe when you have some free time because I know you're on 5 times a week.
I know, I know it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think we should because I'm really concerned because I'm thinking if they can do this to phone lines, what happens to our banks just as easily?
Oh boy, I did a whole piece with Jason McLean about how they're going to we're going to be a paperless society. I mean, we kind of are just a paperless society now. Some of the
Yeah,
older folks, like my mom, still writes checks. Okay, whatever. I haven't written a check in 20 years, I don't think. And yeah, that's pretty scary what's going on out there. And
yeah,
yeah,
it is.
and and they got these, and I heard they have these little special. They're in Michigan anyway. They're redoing. Maybe Brian's heard this. They're redoing the Michigan driver's licenses or state IDs, where there's going to be like a thin chip in your ID. Now, Big Brother, Big Brother knows where you are if you have a cell phone, in my opinion. But now to do it with your driver's license, and we all need a driver's license if we want to drive, right?
Oh, exactly, exactly. You know what I've been noticing too is that remember when we had the debit cards and none of them had chips, and then all of a sudden all of them had chips. You had to go get a new card that had a chip. I'm noticing that more are coming back without them again. I'm wondering if there's an issue.
Well, you know what? I don't really use my bank card from my bank at all, but I have a H&R Block card, which I put
Hmm.
all my like spending money on. I just save the bank is just the bank, and I rarely use that.
Right.
That does not have a chip, which I like. But here's the thing about that: some places where you have to swipe my card. There's more and more retailers that if you have to swipe it, or if you don't
They
have,
got your number.
yeah. So I don't know. It's evolving here in the country, and again, a lot of great topics for shows talking about just this stuff. And
I know. I know it. There's a bunch to talk about. Absolutely.
you know, a few people popping in chat here early. It's Danny State and Daryl Zerline, Edith Gomez, Gemini Moon from Michigan, just up the road from me, about 40 minutes away. Stephen Finnegan, Scott Lady in Baker. Hey, lady, if you're new here, please subscribe. Thanks for coming on in. Anybody that's new, please subscribe to our channels. Brian Barber, of course, is in chat. Roger Blair. Val from Southwest Pennsylvania. Nickname. Hi, Nickname from over there from the UK. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. Scrolling down. A few others. Pamela Stefanich, a great supporter of the show. Hi, Pam. XJ. Hey, X, what's happening, brother? Philip Miller, Werewolf is here. And that's all I see for now. About 30 of you already piled in. So enough of that. We got a great show slated here today with Brian Barber. Been trying to get on for a while. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up Mr. Barber.
Got to kick the cat down.
Well, that's okay.
Hi, Brian.
We love pets. You can show your pet the next time she comes around, or he.
All right.
So
how we doing?
Well,
Good.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing good. We got the great weather coming in, but of course that has storms, as we said earlier, and you've got no snow in Traverse City. Now that to me, if you'd have told me February 22nd in the state of Michigan, in Traverse City, that you have green grass, I would not have. I would have lost a bet. I'd have lost $1 million if I had it.
Oh gosh.
I've lived here my whole life, and I've never seen it in February.
Yeah, I was going to say everything at the top of the mitten always has snow. Everything at the top of the mitten.
Yep. And lots of it by February. Normally about 100 inches by now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that deters me about moving north would be, as much as I like the snow and the falls is pretty and stuff like that, but boy, I can deal with 6 inches, right? When you guys get 3 feet, 4 feet, it's not something I want to deal with. And it's too damn cold in northern Michigan.
Yeah, it hasn't been that bad. We've had 1 week with single digits. That's been it. Normally we have a few in the negative teens by now, but
yeah,
very little. We call it, we had winter in a week because a couple of weeks ago we had where we got a total of, it was 52 inches in 2 days. So,
Wow. Yeah.
but then it all melted off within 2 weeks, and haven't had any since.
Yeah, I hear. Well, this isn't the Weather Channel, and that's how I like to start.
I know we're all fascinated with
Yeah,
it.
I don't know if it's because I'm in my 50s now, and it seems like when you get older, you talk about dumb stuff like the weather. Come on.
Yeah. So, Bigfoot, I've been interested in that. If we want
Yeah,
to go you want to go
I
right
want to
there.
go. Yeah, I was going to say. I think talking in 1987, you had
Well,
something going on. Well, I tell you what, you're the guest, so why don't you take it from the beginning, and we'll get this puppy rolling.
well, from the beginning goes back to the 70s.
Okay, cool.
So my grandma lived on a property in Lake Ann, and they had stuff happening out there. And we had all kinds of woods, and the house was remote to the point where, normally you have a mailing address, a street address. Their mailing address was just Route 1, Lake Ann. So that's how many houses were on that road. They didn't even give them numbers at the time. But we had all the woods to play in. You could play in the woods. You'd see the occasional black bear. The dog would run the black bear out of the barn. But when you would walk, you would get to a point where there would be a field on your left and then a 2-track to the right. And as soon as you would cross that barrier to the 2-track, you would feel like something would be watching you. There'd be no birds, no squirrels. The family dog wouldn't go on there. The same dog that would chase bears out of a barn, but wouldn't go back in those woods. And so, the thing was that's Bigfoot's woods. And then I remember watching, like a lot of people in search of when they first played that Patterson Gimlin film. I think I was 5 or 6 at the time, and I looked at my dad and pointed at the TV. I'm like, is that at Grandma's? And he's like, well, no, not that one, but that's what lives at Grandma's.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandma, her husband, my grandpa, was a deputy at Benzie County Sheriff's Department. And one night while he was on a midnight shift, it was kind of a light, it was really light rain, but thunderstorms. All of a sudden, the dog comes in, runs under the bed, and he's looking at the window whimpering. So my grandma's bed faces the window. She's watching, and a flash of lightning, and there was a huge silhouette that filled up the whole window. So freaks my grandma out. She calls my grandpa, who was on duty, and grabs the shotgun and just sits waiting by the window, wondering if she's going to have to shoot something. And my grandpa comes and he brings people from the sheriff's department, his buddies. And it's getting toward daylight, and outside the window, they found 17-inch tracks, and they even cast them, and they found them going from the window off back into the woods. And they figured whatever made those tracks was about, even with the soft ground, they figure about 500 pounds. So my uncle still has those casts. So even way back then, I knew of Bigfoot, but hadn't seen one at that point. And there's all kinds of family stuff that happened. Like my mom would be riding in the woods.
Can I interrupt you just briefly?
Yeah.
Back when you were growing up, even before all this,
Yeah.
did you were aware about Bigfoot and UFOs, aliens, things like that? When you're a kid or younger man growing up, what was your thoughts on Bigfoot in the beginning before any of this even happened? Did you think it existed, or just some story sent down by First Nations people?
No, Bigfoot to me was something real, but I just hadn't seen it because
Okay.
they had the stuff going on. I would read anything I could, like UFOs and Loch Ness, so it was possible, but nothing I thought I would ever encounter.
Right.
So it was trying to think. Even we would occasionally go back to those woods, even after my grandma left, and whatever was back there, that was their home, its home at the time, because every time you go, there's that creepy feeling you're being watched. There's no birds, no squirrels. So then we'll fast forward. And I'll give you a little backstory as to why I sat on my first experience for over 30 years.
Okay.
I didn't tell anybody because we used to live in a haunted house.
Ooh, right up Randy's expert.
My
And
eyes got real big, like, really?
yeah, we did. We would hear a ball bounce, and all of a sudden my grandma would yell at us. My aunt and uncle raised me, and we lived with my grandma as well. And a ball would start bouncing, and she'd be like, "You kids, knock it off." Well, we were all downstairs, so something was bouncing a ball upstairs, and it happened all the time. Even when there'd be a Christmas party going on, all of a sudden you hear a ball bouncing, and everybody's like, "Who's upstairs?" And like, nobody. So it was pretty benign, but at one point, I was laying in bed and woke up and I couldn't move. And my bedroom drawer was really hard to open because it was a real old house where they actually used like the shredded paper for the insulation.
Wow. Okay.
And so when you open the door, it would drag on the floor. Well, I'm laying in bed and all of a sudden the door just opened easily, very quiet. And in walks this maybe 3 or 4 foot high shadow person. I think
Ooh.
I almost want to call it a demon because
Hmm.
it walked in, it had bright yellow eyes and it smiled, and you could see the bright yellow teeth.
No kidding.
And I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. It just smiled at me for a few seconds, and then it walked out and the door closed, and then I started screaming my head off.
Hmm.
And nobody believed me. I got teased relentlessly for this until it was probably 10 years later when my aunt and uncle were sleeping in that same room after I had moved out. And my uncle, who was a light sleeper, my aunt was laying there. The door opens up. In walks a little shadow person, looks at her, walks out. She's shaking my uncle so hard she pushes him out of the bed. And then when the door shut, my uncle finally woke up. So but I got teased so bad, they actually called me and apologized to me.
Yeah.
that happened. But in the meantime, when I was 16, which would have been about 2 years into this, I like to take late night drives through Lake Ann. It's kind of my stomping grounds. Love to throw in some Boston. Had a 79 El Camino at the time, and just take midnight drives to clear my head. And as I was coming around this one corner next to the guardrail, it looked like a big bag of garbage. That's kind of myth. I'm like, who in the heck? How rude, blah, blah, blah. And as I get closer, it looked, I thought, oh, that's a really big bear. So I start slowing down because I want to, check the bear out and pull off to the shoulder. And I get within the front of the bumper was maybe 10 feet away. And all of a sudden this bear stands up and squares off to me, and definitely not a bear. Its shoulders were as wide as my El Camino from fender to fender. And it was so tall that even with the brights on the eyes, the face was out of view. I could see from the chest down. It was black with in the headlights like brownish highlights.
Mm-hmm.
The arms hung down below the front of the car, and it was just massive. The eyes were shined yellow, and I'm sitting there looking at this, and I thought, well, there he is. And now I'm getting a little scared, and I go to hit the horn, thinking it'll, take off. And as I get ready to hit the horn, it's like it's looking right at me. I don't know how you can explain it other than it felt like it was looking at me through those headlights. And something in my head goes, if you hit that horn, it's going to pull the roof off this thing and you're done. So I'm frozen like this, and it lasted probably 10 seconds or so where we're just eye locked. And then it just turned to its left and stepped over the guardrail and was gone.
Hmm.
So that was my first real sighting, but I didn't tell anybody about it for a long time because I didn't want to get teased. This was 87.
One of our members of chat asked if it growled at all or made any sound.
No, it didn't make a sound, and I had Boston blaring, so I wouldn't have heard anything.
Feels like the first time. This was your first time encountering
Yep.
Bigfoot.
That was my first. Yeah, it feels like the first time born in there.
I saw what you did there.
It was more than it was more than a feeling. I can tell you that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I sat on that one for a very long time because you didn't have those shows where it was normal, but I still kept on. I stayed up on the shows like Monster Quest and anything I could get my hands on. And then after my dad passed, this sounds kind of like a little paranormal dream, but when I had a dream the next night that I asked him, I says, well, because he and I were best friends, and he ended his life with suicide. And so the next night I had a dream and it was like, what am I supposed to do now? What do I do? And he goes, you're going to have to find something else to believe in. And then within a few years, I stayed up on the Bigfoot. Something kept telling me to. And then finally in 2019, I'd been in Facebook groups for a little bit. And a friend of mine told me, he says, he PM'd me and said, if you want to have an encounter, go to this place. So I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. So I called a friend and she's a total skeptic, non-believer. I'm full of crap, but hey, let's go for a ride anyway. It'd be a nice walk. And that was December 2019. So we get back to this place and you go to track and then there's a gate and it's a conservancy. So they've got like a service road, which is where the gate is. So we started walking down the service road and I'm pretty shy. So I didn't do like your traditional howls or screams or anything like that, but I would clap twice just to see if what would happen. And as we go, nothing's happening. And then we get about a mile down this trail. And I look up at the hill and I thought, man, that would be a really cool lookout. I want to go up. I took a picture of it. And I thought, I want to go check that out and see what, you can see, what they can see, whatever. And I took 2 steps up that hill and then what sounded like 2 catcher's mitts hit together twice, faster than I could clap. And I stopped dead. I looked at my friend and she's kind of tearied up at this point. And I said, it takes hands to clap, right? And she's like, yeah, I want to go. I think I'm a little freaked out because, the sounds of those hands was pretty kind of unnerved me. So I'm okay. So I put my keys in her hand and I said, if anything happens to me, just go. Because as we started walking, all of a sudden we started hearing a couple tree knocks. Get a little farther up and we'd hear a whoop. And it was almost like they were celebrating that they were chasing us out. And as we get halfway back, the gate by my truck starts to rattle. You can hear something shaking it really hard. And I'm thinking, totally surrounded at this point. What's going to happen? I just tell her, keep moving. And I turned around. And as I turned around, I could see something large and black duck behind a tree. So, we got followed out. Luckily, nothing happened, obviously, and made it back. But it took me probably 6 months before I went back.
Mm-hmm.
I decided, I want to try to confirm what's going on.
When you're having these experiences, what was your mind going through? Was it hard to process or just?
I was absolutely freaked out and stunned because how many people go out on their first time and get something happening? So, and what was really, like I said, the sound of those 2, I'm guessing they were hands, maybe they were chest thumps, but it was like, just 2 catcher's mitts, bam, bam. And then the fact that they could get around us so quick and rattle the cage or the gate by my truck. So, and it like I said, it took me about 6 months where I finally went, okay, if they actually wanted to get me, then, I would have been gone. So then we started going back, and that was when, started finding some what looked like tree structures and things like that. And then I had seen a picture where, you hear about gifting. I thought, well, maybe I'll try that. And I had seen a picture, and I can't remember who took it. So whoever did, please forgive me. But it was a picture of the peanut butter jar, and it had like the big fingerprint in it. I can't remember. I've seen it on a bunch of shows, but I can't remember who took it. And I
I
thought, well,
can't
heck,
either.
I'll try that. Let's try putting some peanut butter jars out. And it was only a couple weeks, and all of a sudden the peanut butter jars would start to disappear, which squirrels, possums, raccoons, all kinds of stuff. But then when I would start finding them, they'd be completely clean. And then probably half the time the lids would be screwed back on. So it was, matter of fact, I have, sorry, but this is how clean they come back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever tried to wash a peanut butter jar, but
I've got something real here. You sent me a picture. Not to interrupt you. Keep going. I'm gonna see if I can. You sent me a picture of that, didn't you?
I think I sent one of the, I
What was
found one.
it was crushed with some fingerprints on it?
Yeah, I thought something had stepped on it at first, but then when I looked at it, you can see, and my fingers will line up where it grabbed it, and you can see the 4 finger marks on one side.
Is this it here?
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard for me to. I'll be honest. It's hard for me to find the fingerprints if you can point that out. But that is that jar, correct?
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, I know it's hard to, without the jar glaring, to get a good
Yeah,
picture
I
of it.
got it. But anyways, that kind of shows. It shows what you had. So I know that obviously this did take place for sure.
Well, I'm sure it's kind of hard to flatten one of those like that also.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
is. I mean, and then it had like a thumb indentation on the other. So there were 4 indentations on one side and one on the other, where it just, I think, everything's speculation at this point, but
Right.
So I started leaving more peanut butter jars out, and I started leaving like rocks, and I would use colored popsicle sticks, and put them under the peanut butter jar, bungee cord it, and then the peanut butter jar would disappear, and then the popsicle sticks would be laying on the ground, but they'd be sorted out by color. Or they'd be put in like an X, or they would be laid side by side and things like that. I hate to admit this, but I got into this for fun and my curiosity. That was the only reason I did this.
Yeah.
Or am doing this. So I don't have a lot of notes on it. That's the problem. All my notes are my pictures. I have to go back to dates. But at one point there was, I was walking down to the trail, and this would have been in 2021. And I looked up on the hill, and you know how when termites get at a stump, the wood will turn kind of red or something when the sun hits it right. Something just kept my attention on this stump, and I'm like, what the heck is that? So I went to take a picture with my phone, and as I pulled my phone up, the stump stands up, turns around, and jumps off the hill.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's not the first time I've heard that story. I got there might be a story or two in the book, but I've also had guests on the shows. Brand, you might have been available for some of those, where a guy was looking. A hunter had done it, and a person just standing at a tree line had seen this big. It was a stump, and they focused on this stump. And yes, it's a stump. It's a 4-foot round stump, and then all of a sudden, the stump kind of grows like it's a tree. The tree is starting to grow, and it materializes into what was a humanoid looking figure, in which the guys would tell me like a Bigfoot. And that's not the first time I've heard that, which leads me to believe, and we can get onto this a little bit later. I want you to continue with your story. Leads me to believe that these things are something more than just flesh and blood.
Yeah, there's got to be more to it because, something that big that can get around you and not make a noise. And there's so many odd instances out there. But I call that one Big Red because at the time it was about 5 foot. But I mean, he was broader than I am at the shoulders, and I'm 6 foot 275, weightlifter, and made me feel tiny, size wise. So,
Well, I must admit, really quick, Brian, I think you're bigger than a Sasquatch.
ah, maybe a 2-year-old Sasquatch, but
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, look at you're almost as burly as that guy. My lord, you got a good physique going on there, Brian.
that's what working in the gym does for you.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I had to throw that out there.
But you know what? It was seeing that first Sasquatch at 16. I have never considered myself a big guy since seeing that.
Yeah.
When you see something that's pushing 8 foot, and I'm a pretty good guess at weight now. So looking back, and the junkyard in Benzie County has my old 79 El Camino.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in that front seat the size I am now, and you can get 2 of me in there, and that's it.
Yeah.
And its shoulders were outside the fenders. So that tells me it was 700-800 pounds easy. Looking back.
When I hear these stories, and Brandy can attest, I see what I saw: immense strength, width, height. But I still, even like yourself telling the story, I still cannot get over the immense size of these things.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I'm around and been around guys who are 6'2", 300 competitive bodybuilders, and it's just not impressive once you see one of them. It's but yeah, so it's I call him Red because I've seen him 3 times. One time was as the peanut butter thing progressed.
Yeah.
I started leaving more and more out, and I got the weirdest looks in Walmart because this was during the whole peanut butter shortage, and here I am buying 9 jars a week of the 4-pounders.
I get all sorts of weird looks when I go to Walmart.
Like, shame on you.
Yeah, exactly. And they'd really be mad if they knew I was feeding Bigfoot with it, And not all of them went to Bigfoot. I've got jars, and I took a lot of pictures so I could show people this is what happens when a squirrel gets it. This is what happens when a raccoon gets it. So I know they weren't all. It's just when the ones that come back clean and there's not a mark on the lid, those are the ones I suspect are doing that. And when I got to the point when I was leaving the peanut butter, I would start clapping twice so they would know, I put it there. There was one night I decided to go out at night. I don't go out at night very often. One section where I go is fine. The other section just feels like it's off limits at that point. So where I go, I was fine. I finally find like the perfect track to cast. I'm like, awesome. Thinking I'm MacGyver or something. I had the material with me, but I never tried it before. So I had set peanut butter out, and as I'm dumping the plaster, I had mixed it too thin, so it soaks in, ruins the whole print. But then I hear something behind me, and I'm only 20 yards away at this point, and I go back, and the peanut butter's already gone. So it's like, okay, well, I'm definitely not alone. Go put more peanut butter out, go to my truck, come back the next day, and there were I think I sent you those 2 tracks.
Yeah, you know what? I'll good time for that. I'll sort through them here. Thanks to Pamela, and thank you to Lady in Baker for becoming BMR Pirates. Arr.
Arr.
Arr, thank you.
I do have a question for you. How long did it take you from your first experience to being able to cope with it, the encounter, and to begin looking for answers?
About
Maybe I
6
missed
months.
it.
It
About
was
six
about
months.
6 months before I went back. You know, it kind of rattled my cage a little bit, and then got a little braver because it was summertime now and go out. And I
Yeah,
was going out during the day. I wasn't brave enough to go at night.
Hmm.
yeah.
So
6 months seems to be the amount of time it takes for a lot of people, and I only can say for me it took 6 months. Now, of
Hmm.
course, my encounter was really hair raising and
yeah,
disastrous. But
Right.
like I said, when I didn't even go to work for 6 months. Luckily, I owned a business; otherwise, I'd have lost my job. But yeah, I just couldn't process it, and I had a lot of, I even felt guilty, and I don't want to get into me, but really quickly, I was going through these.
yeah.
Had I not brought my girlfriend with me, she'd still be alive, and I kind of forced her into going. I'm over that today. It wasn't my fault, but just to process these things, to see them like that, it's for me. Yes, 6 months. I went back to work. Exactly. It was six, almost going on 7 months. But anyway, continue on. I'm looking, and here's a picture. I think one of them. You sent me a
Well,
couple.
all I
Here.
wanted to say to add to that, Rob, is
Go ahead.
is with
Yeah. Go ahead.
with my encounter. Um, it was so up close and personal, and where I was and who was there, I didn't have the option of holding that and thinking about it. It was already, there were other people who had had the experience, not the visual, but they had an experience with the same thing. So I didn't have that. I mean, it had. I mean, my story had to come out. I mean, I didn't
Oh,
have
for
that
sure.
chance.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I'm with this, group. I'm with Texas Front Porch, and I have great friends who are believers and knowers, and it just made it easier for me. So I can understand if you were holding off to tell your story. I get
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah. Took me a long time to hold off on my story simply because of what happened, and I thought, who's going to believe such a story? I'm going to look like a some guy that's lost in space, right? Just making stuff up when. And today I have no problem telling my story. I never had a problem telling it. I thought about being judged and ridiculed, but I said, you know what? It happened to me. You can't take that away. And Brandy, you are a member now of the knower group, not
Hmm.
the believer, and so is Brian. And I'm gonna pull up one of those pictures for you, Brian. I
Well,
think I
and
got two here.
I mean, a good example of why I sat on my original story was there was a Benzie County sheriff named Zane Gray who,
Mm,
right at that same time period, saw
yeah.
a Bigfoot, reported it.
Oh,
Well,
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, that's
okay, that's a wow.
a nice corroboration, I
yeah,
guess.
and this is why another reason why I sat on it, because they turned around and his competition, Zane was the most popular sheriff in a very long time there.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it being a police officer of any kind is absolutely phenomenal, because they normally don't. They don't want to take that ridicule within the department. So they usually just don't say nothing.
no, he reported it and then turned around and his competition used it in the next election and they voted him out.
Ah,
Thought he was crazy. They used that saying Bigfoot, he's incompetent. Is this who you want running,
Yep.
protecting you?
And I tell you
So
what, and some of the best guests, if you can get them on the show, I've been trying for 2 years now because a couple have come forward, park rangers, that have been in the woods their entire life. That's a career. They've got some fantastic stories and encounters, but they, again, because of their job, and let's face it, a lot of these rangers and a lot of these park services, they know they're out there,
oh
but
yeah.
they don't want this to be broadcast and made public for fear of losing a lot of people from going to their parks. I mean, when it comes down to anything in life, what is it about? About money, right? But
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
here's
absolutely.
I've got
here's
a
what
friend who's retired from Drummond. You guys want to know where Drummond Island is?
I know where it is.
Okay. He worked there 25 years, and just probably last year I was talking to him and came right out and asked him if he ever saw Bigfoot. And he said he had seen him twice, once on the island and then one swimming away from the island. And I asked him if he would, talk about it. And he's like, no, because we'll lose our pension for talking about stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it
So,
makes sense, and does make sense, and I can see it, and that's why that goes on. That's why I love the talking with these people. I've talked to a couple that don't want me to do a story, don't want to be on the show, but I've talked to a couple people, and they have the best. They have some of the best and creepy, and not just Bigfoot, Dogman, all these things they've seen, elementals, all the things. Well, here's some reverb there, but all of these things. So, but yeah, thank
Oh,
you, and
absolutely.
thanks, Annie, for the awesome super chat. I'm gonna
Thank you.
now get to okay, I'm gonna get to kind of backdate. One is this okay, not that one very quick. Here's a really cool one here. Is that what you're talking about? I see
Oh
some
wow.
toes. That's
no,
really a nice picture there.
nope, that's a different one.
Okay.
That one, trying to think, that one was just by my truck.
Wow, I can
We
definitely
were
see.
we were down putting, I was down putting peanut butter out and came back, and that was by my truck. The reason why I put the stick in there was I snapped the stick off the length of the track because I didn't have my tape measure, and that was 17 inches.
Okay.
And that's
Hmm.
not even the biggest one out there. That one, you will find a lot of times with a 23-inch track. So
Wow.
I don't know if it's a couple out there,
And
because I've also found some baby tracks.
yeah. Here's one really is this the same one, but it seems like it might have melted out a little bit. And this is a pretty big one.
That one was the day after. I sent you one where there's excuse me, two steps with some deer tracks next to it.
I think that it's in the fall or spring. It's not winter time, correct?
Yep, no, it's wintertime.
Oh, okay. And I don't know if I got
I
that.
think it's got two yellow circles on it because I deleted the original.
Yeah. No, I don't know if I got those. Anyways, but
Anyway, that one's actually, I sent you the video where I'll tell you the story behind that is that's the next day. What happened was a friend and I went out, just decided to do a late night run. And we saw there's some deer tracks that were going up the hill, but then there were two steps that cleared this hill. And I said, I know what made those because whatever it did had stepped over the bank and then stepped and was gone. And so I told my friend Shauna, who was with me, I said, I know what's made those. Let's go see what we can find. Because it was pretty fresh.
mhm.
So it was nighttime. Had my flashlight. I said, well, we're going to go in lights out. So, she was stage 4 cancer at the time. So she was about 105 pounds soaking wet. And so we, trudge our way up the hill. And as we get over the top of the hill and maybe 10 or 15 yards past it, we can hear stuff start breaking around us. And she's like, well, what's that? I'm like, I don't know. It could be deer. We saw deer tracks. Pushed a little farther and then heard a big tree snap in front of us. And then that's when she's like, well, turn on your light. And so I turned on my flashlight. And at the edge of the light is the one I called, I'm pretty sure it was the one I call red. And as soon as that light hit it, it brings its arm up like this to cover its eyes. And I turned to her and I'm like, go. And as soon as we turn around, it roared at us. It didn't go into the high pitch. It was just a guttural roar that lasted a few seconds. I mean, it went right through you. It was like being at a concert right next to the bass. I mean, it vibrated everything. So we start trying to make our way back. I'm pushing her because she's obviously not going fast enough for me. And something is following us out. It's not running, but you can hear the thud in the snow, and the branches breaking. And it was, And I said, if I'm not in that truck right behind you, you go. And she's like, what about you? And I'm like, it's not going to matter. So I'm pushing her and open the door, throw her in the truck. Well, the road was a sheet of ice. So as soon as my foot hit the ice, I slip and fall under my truck,
Oh no.
trying to scoot my way out, you know. And next thing I hear is my truck start. I'm like, holy crap, she's serious. You know, luckily I got out before she put it in drive, pushed her over, get back in the truck. We leave, and it was probably 2 miles down the road before either one of us said anything. And I said, I'm ready for a drink. How about you? And she goes, no, we got to stop at Shell first. And I'm like, for what?
Sounds like me.
She says she had wet her pants when it roared.
Boy, oh boy.
So, and I said, hey, don't feel bad, because if I hadn't used the bathroom before we came, I would have done the same thing.
Right, exactly.
So we stopped at Shell, and luckily she had snow pants on. So put everything in the back of the truck and went.
I don't know. You know, I probably would have lost my movement too if I was what would happen to me. But I was like put in a state of shock where I had no cognizance of anything going on. It's just, yeah. Those
It was a shock
roars,
to me. When
the
he brings
roar,
that arm up, and you can see that it was about 3 or 4 inch, you know, almost like an auburn hair. So that was
yeah,
why I think it was the same one that I saw up on the hill.
you
But
know,
you
it's
know,
just a
by
lot of
then it
these
was a
things.
year later and probably a foot taller.
A lot of these things remind me of mine. This is what I saw, man. See that
Yeah.
hair coming down? This is when I metamorphosize into this creature. What I seen with my own two eyes. And at this point is when it yelled, roared, and screamed, where everything turned black and white and everything. And I gotta tell you, man, but that score, that the depth of that, and I've heard a similar roar the text sent me with Gary Spikes Jr. And I was sitting here at home just like this, and I heard that sound. I had goosebumps, and I just thinking about it, man, just puts me in a state of dread. Just thinking about it.
I think if my encounters would have been, um, I guess, a little more aggressive, kind of like what you both experienced with the growls and the guttural screams, and if I would have had that, I think it would have gave me PTSD. I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't know what to do with that. I mean, mine was very quiet and very easygoing. I didn't have any of that with it, but I can't imagine how you would feel after having an experience or an encounter just like that.
Well, and I turned around, and to me, I kind of blame myself because, like, one, I didn't know you weren't supposed to hit him in the face with a flashlight.
Yeah. Hey,
Two,
really quickly, I hate to do. I still was going to do this. I'm not
All
going
right.
to take. We'll continue on. Just a quick 10 seconds for Randy. I'm not going to have 10 seconds of dead air. Please subscribe to the Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Texas Front Porch on YouTube, Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube, Barton Nunley and Humanoids on YouTube. And also, Brian, if you've got anything later, I want you to send me your links, and I want everybody to run over and check out your web page, whatever you got going. So that's 10 seconds, and we can continue to
That's
move
10
on.
seconds. So, Randy, 10 seconds. We're done.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Sorry about that, but yeah.
no worries. You know, out of all the times I've been out there and had experiences, there's only one of 3 times where it's been like terrifying. The rest of the time's been pretty okay. I don't want to say comfy, cozy, go up and give them a hug or nothing, but pretty copacetic. Because there have been other crazy instances out there, and you know, and then like you get a kick out of this one because the first time I bought one of those Seek thermal that you plug into your iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
and I was using that. First time I'd used it, so I'm playing with the color scheme and put it on white for hot. And I was out at night this time. It was about 10 o'clock. And I'm standing there looking because I think I sent you a picture of a gate. But anyway, I was leaning on that gate looking, and you can see the road, and then you can see the road trees where it curves around, and I can see these two black, where it looks like gaps in the trees. And, I can hear an occasional tree knock. And then also I'm looking and it's like I'm looking and I'm like, why are these black, why are the gaps in the trees getting bigger? And I'm like, what the heck? And then I hear a huge tree break behind me. And so I whip around, and as I'm whipping around, I get my truck on the thermal, and the engine's black. I'm like, oh crap, I got it on black for hot.
Oh, well.
So
Oh, yeah.
and the gaps in the trees are much closer and they're much bigger. I'm like, okay, now it's time to go.
Yeah.
And as I get in my truck, when you know how you got to step in the right to put it in gear, you can
Mhm.
see big shadows right behind my truck.
Mhm.
So, and then I go back the next day, and you can see where they had walked up it's a real hard, I don't know what you call pea gravel or something that they put down.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to get tracks, but you can see where they walk through the grass, because the grass is all pushed down one way, and then you can see where they walk back because it was pushed down the other way. So there's been stuff like that. I put a glow in the dark ball out at one point, and the ball disappeared, which, lots of stuff disappeared out there. But then it was about 6 months later, all of a sudden the ball turned up back in the same spot I had left it. And there's not a mark on it. No tooth marks, no scratches, no nothing. And I'm scratching my head, and then I'm like, hey, wait a minute. So I lift my shirt and stick the ball under my shirt. Well, it quit glowing. So I think they returned it because it quit working right. So I put another one out there, and that ball disappeared, and I haven't seen it since.
Hmm. Do
So
you
the other day,
have, I'm sorry. Do you have like, I mean, a lot of people out there that says that you should not gift them.
I'm gonna get to that. I got some bad consequences from that.
Okay, because I was wondering, I mean, with putting the peanut butter out there
Yeah.
and toys and things, what happened? I mean,
So the way it worked out was, and if I shed a tear, I'm sorry, because I carry a lot of guilt about this one.
Hmm.
Because I got sick back in 2023, and I missed about 4 weeks of going out there. So, and then after about 2 weeks of going back, the DNR got hold of me. So they had put cameras out to get, my plate and then track me down.
Hmm.
And they called me. And so the phone conversation was pretty interesting. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but the weird thing was we have an office right here in Benzie County. But they
mhm.
sent somebody from the other side of Cadillac, which is over an hour away, to come talk to me. So the conversation starts off, well, what's going on is we're contacting you because with the peanut butter, the wildlife is getting close to the house, and, it's people are getting bothered by it. And she goes, and the bears are coming out of their den. And I'm like, bears? And she goes, yeah, and there are bears around, but I've never seen a bear in this area
Mhm.
that I've gone. And it's 3 years at this point. And she goes, yeah, you're feeding the bears. I'm like, well, wait a minute. People are feeding. I mean, I get it. And I'm not being mean. I'm just trying to figure out, because people feed the deer, they feed the birds.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, but the bears are bugging the people. And I'm just like, okay, bears. And I asked her, I said, is this conversation being recorded? And she's like, no. I says, well, I've been out there 3 years, and I've never seen a bear, never seen bear scat, never seen a bear mark, and bears don't leave 23-inch tracks, throw logs at my truck, and knock at me.
Yeah.
And she's like, excuse me? I went, no, I think that's all I'll say on that. And she goes, well, we want to see your trail cams. I'm like, well, I don't put trail cams out. And she's like, do you have any good picture? What do you have on your phone? And I'm like, nothing, just pictures of nature. So
No way.
So she read me the riot act, and rightfully so. She's like, you can't be doing this. You can't be leaving the peanut butter. You can't do this. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And she goes, but I got to ask you, because when I put peanut butter jars out, I date the lid and I also date the bottom with an initial where I put it. And she's like, we've got all these peanut butter jars here. She goes, do you want them back? And I'm like, what kind of shape are they in? And she goes, well, most of them are okay. They're clean. And she goes, but why did you put one date on the lid and one date on the bottom?
Hmm.
What are you talking about? And she goes, there's like a January, I forget the one she named, but it was like a January date on the lid. And it was like a March on the bottom.
Now, this is the who's just telling you this? This is the DNR person?
Yeah, the DNR conservation officer.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of chuckled. I was so nervous talking to him. I thought I was going to get in big trouble. That I should have asked for him back, but I didn't. But so yeah, the DNR got on me about it. And there's 3 houses out there. I should say 3 pieces of property on one side of the road. The one neighbor and I get along fine. They know what I'm doing. So when I happened to be driving out there after the DNR talked to me, they came out to the road to talk to me. And this is where I'm going to get a little choked up, but she says, we hated to do that, but, we had to call the DNR because, I forget how the locals were getting crazy. And I'm like, well, what do you mean?
Mm.
And she says, well, after about a week where you wouldn't make it, she said, all of a sudden our motion lights were going off. She says, like 2, 3 in the morning, our motion lights would start going off. And she said, so we started looking at the footage, and it was peanut butter jars being thrown and bouncing in the yard.
Oh, wow.
So then after a week of that, they started at the other neighbor who we don't get along, started to peek in their windows. They were having issues where the one actually looked, the little girl's like 5 or 6, and woke up screaming because one was peeking in the window. Dad came in and saw it and got a picture of it. So I caused that because they were apparently trying to get the peanut butter back. And
Well, some of that sounds okay. I'm getting a lot of feedback right now, Rob. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I can
Brian.
understand that they would tell you to stop feeding, but that sounds ridiculous that they're making it up because of the bears. And yet they want your trail cam footage, whatever's on your phone. They're wanting all this other kind of stuff. That's kind of fishy right there. And I get the point of finding the jars and that they don't know exactly where they came from, so they're just kind of looking around for them. Personally, I think that any time that they wanted any more peanut butter, they could have followed you, watched you, seen you without you even knowing. They would have known where you were, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing is that I guess you need to start putting like an email address on there and saying, if you find this jar, email me and tell me where.
Yeah, well, I had to promise I wouldn't do it anymore because it is a conservancy, and so technically it's private property, and they could, kick me out of there. So I agreed.
Yeah, I guess if they wanted to figure out where you were, I suppose.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, since then, because I wondered what was going to happen, the next time I go down there and I don't have peanut butter, or am I going to get a butt whipping, or what's going to happen?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people, and gifting. I mean, I have mixed thoughts when it comes to gifting. I've had a lot of people have nothing but incredible experiences, and I've also had people when they stopped gifting, the Bigfoot would either if it's on their property, they would have rocks thrown at their house. They would have more and more occurrences closer to the home dwelling. And Brian, in some instances, if they have a location where they're doing their research and looking for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and they stopped gifting, they would follow the people home and antagonize them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've mixed. People could do however they want to approach it. For me personally, what I've seen is I have a bad. For me, it was terrible what happened to me. So I'm just anti friendly creature. I don't want the creature in my backyard or following me home. Certainly, I'm lucky I was on the water. But so, what's your thoughts on that? I think I don't know. To me, ugh, I guess I'm anti-gifting. Is what I'm trying to say. Long story short,
I
Well,
think
my thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think if you don't have neighbors or anybody else who's going to pay consequences, then okay, because you're the only one. And that's what I feel bad about was, these people's lives they've been living out there because there's been activity out there for decades. Somebody sent me one of the uh, Sasquatch Chronicles, and the guy talks about back in the late 80s and early 90s how they were around Heron Lake, which is only just a mile from where I'm at,
Hmm.
and all the experiences back then. And supposedly how the Conservancy got this, I don't know this for a concrete fact, but from what I'm told, the Conservancy got this property from a family who's had that property since the early 1900s. Well, the original people who had the property built a cabin back there, and I've seen the foundation for the cabin. You can see where there's kind of a hole, and it looks like,
Hmm.
some huge logs, rotted logs laying off to the sides. And supposedly what happened was they built it, and then within a couple months, the Sasquatch activity got so bad that they just abandoned the cabin. And so they kept the property in the family, just to go up for like a weekend camping trip or something. And then finally, the person who owned it was old enough where they didn't have any more relatives, so they just sold it to the Conservancy to keep the property woods, you know, with some hiking trails and things like that.
yeah. No,
Well, I'm just thinking on this. My brother still it lives in Michigan, and he has property. Not I'm not going to say where, but not very far from where you are. And they actually had a crew out there filming documentary on Sasquatch and activity up there. And it's funny because, like I would say, like 2 years later, the state come in and said, "Hey, we need to dig this up because we need to put in this water drainage, blah, blah, blah." Next thing you know, they cut a whole bunch of trees down and built this big old ditch. And then automatically all the activity stopped. It was kind of crazy. All of it stopped. And my brother had said that now that the trees are coming back up and filling in those bare spots, he says, every now and again we get a little bit of activity. He says, but not now. It's like they knew what was going on and had to stop what was happening. It was crazy.
Well, that was the activity out there. There was one day I was out and sitting there, and I could hear, try to think of how to exactly describe it, like those wah that you hear. And then the dog across the street started barking. It would
Yeah.
stop. And then as soon as the dog started barking again, or as soon as the dog stopped barking, it's something that would go off again. And this goes on
Mm.
for 30 minutes. It's just sitting there teasing the dog. And then finally somebody just rips a gunshot off, and then everything was down. So they're not afraid out there to be pulling triggers. So that's why I don't do any yells or anything like that. But
I'd be afraid too.
I haven't been out in a few months. I had a heart attack back in December,
ouch.
so I
Oh
haven't been
goodness.
out there. But instead of peanut butter, what I started doing was somebody suggested like crystals and CDs, and so I'll take some rocks and then put them like where the peanut butter stuff is or was, and you'll go through, and all of a sudden you'll find the rocks and dig through it. The blue ones are gone. So
Wow.
somebody's taking the blue stones. So that's
Mm-hmm.
happened a couple times now. And then they also have kind of, in a way, gifted. It was mine to begin with, but there's been 3 times where I've lost something in the woods, and then all of a sudden it gets returned to where either a peanut butter tree next or where I park.
These Sasquatch really in tune to you. You've tapped into something here, or or is that just me speculating?
No, because I lost a friend. It was last year in July, and she was just the sweetest lady, real firecracker, and as sappy as it sounds, the only place I could think of to go to let loose was in those woods. So I go sit down in the woods. I got some sad music playing and crying my eyes out, and all of a sudden I hear this long, mournful, whoa, and I'm like, what the heck? And it happened 3 more times while playing the music. So it was almost like they were, I'm speculating, guessing, but like they were mourning with me, like they could feel that pain. So, and that was where I had a dog clicker that I'll use, to let them know when I leave stuff instead of clapping all the time. I'll use the dog clicker. And I got back to my truck and realized I lost it somewhere
Yeah.
back in the woods. I'll never find it. And when I went back 2 days later to check on the stones I had left, the dog clicker was tied around the gate.
Hmm.
Wow. Holly has a pretty interesting point here, kind of where I'm thinking. She says, "I wonder if gifting Sasquatch is like feeding wildlife. You're always told not to feed wildlife, and I wonder if it's the same type of idea. They'll become too comfortable with people." I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get your attention when you quit doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was
Yeah.
again, and it just depends how ornery they can get. Is why I'm kind of against it because you never know. When I say this all the time. I'm not pro or con or pro or con when it comes to Bigfoot being aggressive or mean, like people, like humans. There are good people, bad people in the world, right? And I'm guessing that's the same with Sasquatch. Not so much with the dog man, but I think Sasquatch is more of a humanoid than where a dog man would be a who knows what that is. And who knows what Bigfoot is too, for that matter, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think it's like anything else. Like, you catch a good one on a bad day, or maybe you get around a young one that get between mom and a young one or something. Bad things can happen. And when you're that big, a little love tap can do some serious damage.
You know,
Oh,
you got,
absolutely.
I've got some recordings where I was, they let you know when you don't want you around, that's for sure.
you know,
There was one man taping the recorder up, and it was to a street sign where the road runs by. And I'm taping it, and all in the recording, it's hilarious because all of a sudden you can hear bang, and then I curse. I'm like, crap, that's a rock. And then you hear me taping, but you hear 3 more rocks hit that sign. So, and on that recording that night, you can hear it's kind of hilarious because it's nowhere near as good as the Sierras by any. I'm not even I shouldn't even compare it, but you can hear like little samurai chatter in the background, and then you can hear sticks breaking and banging, and it started at 12:30 at night, and it goes on till like 2:30 in the morning. But at one point, I don't know if he hit his thumb or something, but one's like, then the last thing you hear is that right around 2:30, you can hear something walking and it's getting closer to the recorder. And then you can hear it scratch on the microphone.
wow.
And the next day, when I went out and got the recorder, there was that 23-inch track right next to the recorder.
Wow. You know what? You did take the time to send a couple pictures, which might be kind of what you're talking about. Even I'll pull up a couple of them, and if you want to speak on these really quickly here. Now we went through the snow one. Here is, this is, oh, okay. I see some tracks in here.
Yep, and that is actually heading that's right next behind it would be the one of my peanut butter trees,
Okay.
and it's going toward another one. And I put a tape on that, and it's 23 inches.
That it right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then,
you can see where it starts to walk. You can see a tree break, and then where it mowed one under, and then another tree break as it was going.
And then we've got, here's one. Is this the same one just on the side showing the whip?
Yep.
I can see toes in the top there for sure. How wide is that reading? 6 inches?
No, I think it was, what was it? 10 inches?
Oh, wow.
8, 9, 10.
At any rate, it's a very big print. That's 23 by 10, 6 to 10, right? Man,
Yep.
that's
the one I was
pretty.
talking about.
Yeah, okay. This is what I thought. Okay, this is pretty cool here.
Yep, that was the night we followed those back into those woods, and Bob Daigle actually took that picture and lightened it up. And there's actually 2 of them on the left-hand side. I'd have to send the pictures Bob lightened up. I didn't even know and there's one on the right. And if the measurement's right, they're pushing 10 feet. But that was where we walked in between, and just as we got over that hill was when we started hearing stuff break behind us.
Now, what is in? You have the 2 that you highlighted in yellow.
Yep.
And then you've got that straight path. Is that you're walking, or is that also the?
Nope, that was the first pic I took before we walked back there, and then it's deer tracks next to it.
Okay. And look at the gate on that. I can't get it. That can't be the gate from the bottom to the top picture, is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's nothing in between. And then I sent the video where it shows me going back the next day trying to recreate that to see how many steps it would take me.
And how many steps?
It was 9. And I'm pushing snow, so you can see the snow in between my steps where there's no kick.
Yeah, no, they're actually, let's pull that back up. Oh, that's not it. Yeah,
even in the tracks, you can see where they kicked the snow in between each.
I do see that now that you mentioned that, looking at it. What's your thoughts on the tree structures? Here's the X. What do you think? Before I'll put that back up. When it comes, Brandy, we just lost. There she is. Tree structures. You have a couple tree structure pictures here, and before we get into that, what's your thoughts on it? You think it's a marker for their territory or a communication to other Sasquatch?
I think it's both, because you get your X's and then you'll get like asterisks. There's one picture, I didn't send it to you, but it's one area I refuse to go back to where the trees are twisted like candy canes and bent in a bow.
Okay.
And, I don't know if it's communication to people or other Squatches. Hey, this is how big I am, how bad I am. Look what I can do. Keep out.
And how many of it, when you've been out in the woods quite often, how much of this you think is tree fall, man-made, or Sasquatch? Now this here, what's your thoughts on this one? How tall is that? About 7, 8 feet?
I think so. Is that one I sent?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep, that would be.
I think it's this one, just off on a different angle. Whoops. Oh, there's that, and then we have this. I don't know if they're the same or different.
I always look for the ones where the trees are interwoven. Those are the ones where really giggle.
Well, interwoven, that's definitely, when I see the interwoven ones, that's something taking time to make it. And
Yeah,
I frankly don't think a human being, unless they were unless they were really roughing it and they didn't bring a tent and they're looking to make a shelter, I don't think the average human being is just gonna go through all that. They're gonna bring a tent, right? I mean,
that and
Randy,
with the size of the trees. I mean, when the size of the trees are like this, that are jammed up in, or
so what do you think, man?
I do think there's a lot of deadfall out there. The one thing I have going for me out there is, with Lake Michigan being literally right there, most of the wind comes off the lake, so the trees tend to fall one direction. So if I see a bunch of trees laying one direction, and all of a sudden there's one going the opposite, it's like, why?
Well, that's a great point because I'm familiar with Lake Michigan, and I tell you, that wind from the lake effect wind and everything else, that gets blowing. Brandy can probably even attest to that with the time
Oh
she's
yeah.
been up there. And everything it goes left to right, or it would be going from the west to the east. And anything that goes against that is definitely not the wind. Have you seen any of the tree roots that are uprooted where it was pulled right out of the ground and turned upside down?
One time, I was looking for a new place when I was still putting peanut butter out.
Mhm.
And as I got to the top of the bluff, there were 19-inch tracks, which I don't find out there. It was the first time I'd ever found 19. And then there was a cherry tree turned upside down with the roots, and it was probably 12 feet.
Have you ever noticed any of the twisting of the branches? That's what a lot of reports say, is that the branches have been twisted and not necessarily placed, but they're still hanging on the tree.
Yeah. Yep. There's been some twisting out there. There was one that it looked like something pulled one down this way and one down this way, and it made almost like a perfect little blind where something could sit and watch the field for deer.
Okay.
And those were about 10 feet up, and big, thick branches. So you look around and it's like, okay, what else is broken? Try to figure out okay, now why are there just those two broke? I always try to debunk whatever it is, because it's like the pictures. I'll send the pictures out to people and they find more stuff than I do. I suck at it.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, I'm not the best at it, but I've seen
You know,
pictures just like you said. I have a guy that sends me pictures. I don't really see nothing, but I see things that he doesn't have circled. But what is it? We just don't know. Pictures, like Brandy says, when in doubt, throw it out type of thing. And that's why I love the audio. And I wish I could have pulled up that audio you sent me. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. Like things that gotta Krista's good at it. But do you think that have you had this Bigfoot though? Have they on your property at all? I mean, they come up to your house, look at peer in the windows. Have you had anything like that happen?
no, I live actually about 40 miles away
Okay. And you
from where
don't
I go.
think, and I think you're in tune to these things. You have no recollection, any weird feelings that maybe they followed you home. You ever get a feeling sitting at home that you're being watched?
No,
Really?
no, I live
Yeah,
in a
for
trailer.
me, I mean, considering the gate that you showed us in that one picture with the circles, considering that gate, 40 miles is nothing to them. That wouldn't take them that long to get there.
Yeah, no, I've never at home anyway.
Well, that's a good thing because I wouldn't like that for myself. I don't think. I mean, I don't
Oh,
know. I mean, I don't. I mean, it's I mean,
I don't want to say
spe-
wildlife doesn't come around here, because we do get coyotes, and we even had a bear in our trailer park, and we got 500 homes here. So
okay, okay, yeah. Well, I gotta ask you this because you've got a lot of good experiences. This has been a great show. And okay, so you've been out since '87, really diving into this in 2019 and so forth. And I know this is always the $1 million question, which nobody has an answer to, including me, when it comes to Sasquatch, Bigfoot, if you will. First Nations, a lot of them think they're spiritual, and some think they're flesh and blood. And again, it goes with Americans, researchers. You think Sasquatch is more spiritual, or do you think it's just? Are you in the Apers camp or are you in the Woo camp? I guess I should ask. And
I'm
you
in the
can
middle.
answer however you want. There's no judgment here because I'm a combination of both myself.
I was gonna say I'm a combination of both because there's too much weird things that happen, but at the same time, they're obviously physical, but I think they have capabilities we just don't understand. I've had tape recorders turned off 20 minutes after I'm there, and then other recorders that'll run all night. But then I would go and check the batteries. The batteries are full, but somehow the tape recorder got turned off, even though I had it on lock. You hear about. I wasn't really big on cloaking until I had a friend who's actually got some really weird pictures where he's actually got two looking in his truck. You can see the heads in the truck, but then the bodies look like Predator.
Well, Brandy can tell you about that. I don't know if I'd like that either.
So, and the fact that something that big can get so close and not hear it.
Well, that's the thing. I believe this, and I tell my brother. My brother, he's on board with the whole Bigfoot thing. Not that he never did not believe it. I think that in the back of his mind, we're kind of similar, and he thinks things happen. But now, and he's been hunting for 20 years, and now every time he goes hunting with my nephew as well, they actually look for evidence now. I mean, they don't just go to hunt now; they'll look for Bigfoot evidence. And I always like to tell this story about, and this is how it was so cool. My brother lined up a deer, shot a deer, tracked it for 100 yards, the blood trail, and he calls me. He calls me, and he had cell communications, okay, which was unusual. It was kind of in and out, but he calls me. I'm like, I thought this guy's hunting because typically he'll text me. Normally you don't get the reception, whatever he did, but it was kind of gravelly. He goes, Rob, I think I'm on a track of a Bigfoot. I go, what do you mean? Yeah, my deer, man. I've been tracking this deer for about 100 yards. It came to this big tree, and then the deer fell down. There's an impression of the deer in the ground, in the foliage. I know it's a deer, but it's gone. It's not been dragged off. There's nobody around. There's no four-wheelers. People didn't steal it. Plus, it's too. I mean, it take forever to steal. Come on, dude. There's no evidence of humans. But then he says, Rob, I look, and this deer was drug up this big tree. The blood trail went up the tree, and all of a sudden it vanished. He goes, was that a Bigfoot? I'm like, man, what else could it have been?
That was, you hear stories about hunters who lose their deer like that. And I wondered about Bigfoot in trees. I'd heard a couple times, but then I recently shared a picture with a couple people where I found one, what they call them, hangers, where they're huge trees that are actually just straight across. It looks like it would take a piece of heavy equipment, but there's no way for the equipment to get down there. So I just took a picture of the hanger because it's probably 15 feet in the air. And I sent it out to show a couple people, look what I found. And they're like, well, what about the Bigfoot? I mean, what do you mean, what about the Bigfoot? What Bigfoot? And sure as crap, up in the crook of the tree, where on one end looks like about a 6-footer, kind of peeking out from behind there. They didn't even see it. So for them to be up in the tree and drag a deer up there,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah, but my thing is this too: drug a deer up there, then it just disappeared. I mean, it's like gone.
Were there other trees around for it to?
Yeah, yes, but I wasn't at the property. He didn't send picture of the. I told him you should have snapped a picture of the trees surrounding you because I was going to ask him because I was thinking that maybe it had kind of went from tree to tree, right? But if you're talking something 500 pounds, 800 pounds, 1,200 pounds,
Yeah.
you need some supporting branches to hold the weight, right? That's the thing.
And I do believe in the portal thing.
Yeah, I do.
Because there's been plenty of times where I'm walking and 20 or 30, there's so much dead leaf fall out there. that you can see the impressions, but there's nothing to cast. You know, and I'll follow 20 or 30 steps and then they're just gone. Like, where do they go?
And I don't believe that they backtrack. I know there's a very popular person out there that they can actually identically walk backward in their track, maybe 2 steps, but not 2 miles. Right, Brandy, shaking your head over there?
And that's what I'll find them starting
Brandy,
at
you're
the
on mute.
gate. You know, I'll find them starting.
Brandy, you're on mute. I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh,
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was just doing that because I was getting kind of a feedback and I was just seeing if it'd quit. But what I was going to say about the whole portal thing, um, I I'm paranormal to begin with, been that way most of my life. And so I believe that you can open doorways and let bad things in. I get that. But why not on the cryptid side? Why can there not be doorways that these things can go into and come out somewhere else? Why not? Why couldn't that be? I mean, we don't know anything about it. And and I was just sitting here trying to say that, yeah, I completely understand that. I'm so sorry. I was on mute.
Yeah, we're like, I seen your mouth move, and I'm like, oh, she's on mute.
Oh, so sorry. Like I said, I was getting a bad feedback, so I just hit my mic
Yeah.
button so to make it stop. But go ahead. I'm so sorry, Brian. I didn't mean to interrupt
oh,
you.
no worries. I mean, why, they talk about people and I'm going to start looking into this because I wanted to understand more about frequencies. I mean,
Mhm.
if you are they say if you're on a higher frequency, then you're more likely to have encounters. And, why can't they be on such a frequency that they're able to tune into where these portals are and use them to
Uh,
their advantage?
And
You know,
and why not be attracted to some humans because they're on that higher frequency? Why
Right.
not show themselves to them, Why not?
and I
Yep.
gotta tell you,
And that's the other thing I can tell you for a fact that I have a CPL, and carry, but when I go in the woods, I have to leave that in my truck because if I carry that in the woods, nothing happens. I hear squirrels and see chipmunks and everything else. But as soon as I put that gun away, then, and it doesn't happen all the time, but anytime I carry, nothing happens. And then when I don't carry is when things do happen. So I don't know if they smell the gun oil or what. And it's not for them. I'm more worried about other people.
Mm,
yeah, and again, with you getting this sense of you, Brian, your intent is good. I think a
mhm.
lot of these creatures, paranormal or otherwise, Bigfoot, I think that they can sense our intentions.
All right.
I learned
Appreciate
that from
that.
Brandy.
Yeah, and let's not forget they may not be what they think. Well, what we think they are. They could be, like we've discussed, part of the Fae, which is a whole different thing. Um, so I mean, that's a whole nother show, as we know. We can go on and
Yeah.
on for hours about that. But
Yes,
uh,
probably.
And
I
that's
didn't mean
yeah,
to cut you off, Brandy. It's just like real Brian. It's like since you are now into, obviously you're a Bigfoot enthusiast as you've got up here, which is a
yes,
cool way to say it. I don't call myself a researcher either.
no.
I'm a media personality. You know, I have a show, but yes, I do go out in the woods and look, and I've had ghost experience. I've had all sorts of weird experiences in my life. But now that you are into this and you're out in the woods, have you come across? You believe in other factors of the woods? I mean, what's your thoughts? I mean, ghost shadow people. You mentioned early at the start of the show. I've seen shadow people. I forget. Were you a younger man or saying,
Yeah,
or
I
was
was I was 14 at the time.
see, Brandy, and again, Brian, this is towards you too. Brandy, I had all my ghost encounters early as a kid. And I think that the earlier you are in life, I think sets you up for more possible experiences the older you get and the wiser you
I
get.
believe that. I believe
Yeah,
that
well,
because I had mine before I could even remember. My mom has to tell me the stories because I don't remember them. I was too young. So I believe that.
speaking of paranormal, I can give you an example right now with somebody had told me I've got a playful spirit here in the house. You can see in the background I've got, quite the little Incredible Hulk collection going back there. The Hulk on the top shelf I'd be sitting out in the living room, and all of a sudden I'd hear thump. I'm like, what the heck? Go in, and that Hulk figure would be laying clear over here on the floor.
Hmm.
Thought, So I'd put it back up, and it would happen at least once a week. And it was driving me
Wow.
nuts. And I told a friend about it, and she took, I don't know where she came up with this idea, but she took one of those Beanie Baby prayer bears and took it to her church and asked the minister to put a blessing on it. And so I put the prayer bear up there that you can see the white in the background back there. And ever since then, the Hulk quit committing suicide. So quit jumping off. So,
Well, yeah. I mean,
you know,
at this point, with all of your encounters and experiences, everything is possible.
and that's what I learned with Bigfoot was I used to be, they were strictly flesh and blood, blah, blah, blah. But now that I'm hearing more and looking more into it, it's like, how can I draw a line on something like that? Like my mom had an experience with Dogman before they moved to Lake Ann. You know, that was
Yeah, I mean, a
crazy.
lot of people are readjusting their theories and things like that now that the more that this community is building in size. There's, like I said, there's more and more people that they're not quite sure that these things are just flesh and blood anymore, because there's so many things that are unexplainable that
And
they
that's the
can't
one thing
deny.
I wish would happen was it seems like, and maybe it's just me and maybe I'm going off in the wrong direction, but it seems like the community is so divided into little camps.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is.
They're trying to bring everybody together, and now you hear, you're either woo, you're flesh and blood, you're alien, uh, or the fact this isn't good enough and this is too good, and AI is coming out, that makes everything a whole new mess.
yeah, well,
Oh,
that's just a whole again another topic. When
yeah,
it
that
comes
just
to
makes everything
that,
a mess.
a long time ago, I kind of learned this. And Ron, I was talking with Ron Moore. I've talked to him a couple of times, and I've
Oh, I
told this
love
many
Ron.
times. But I'm going to say this is that people to me that walk around with blinders on, I have no use for them. I mean, that's pretty bold statement, but I don't. I mean, if you're just one way and that's it, and you're not open minded, and you don't want to listen to or have a friendly debate. I mean, you could believe that it's just flesh and blood, and I can believe it's just woo. But if you can't listen to what I have to say or anybody else, then really you're not helping the community out. And those people, I have no use for.
No, you
And
have to listen to
and
everything to
and
try to
and,
get something out of it.
and and I always used to say, it was all these old time researchers. They're in the ape camp, and that's it. Well, fine. I'm not interested in you. I will tell you this though. When I talked to Ron Moorhead, he told me I'd been on the show like twice. And the first time I had him on the show, and I always like reflecting on this, especially if it comes up during a show. Rob, if you would have met me 30 years ago and you came up to me suggesting anything pertaining to the woo about Bigfoot, I said, young man, turn around and go home. I do not want to hear it.
Yes. Yes.
Now he has the foresight. Now, today, and I talked to him maybe 6 months ago, last time I talked to him. He wrote the quantum Bigfoot. He thinks that Bigfoot is the woo combination of both. He goes, there's a flesh and blood element, but how can they go from point A to point B? And what I mean by point A is like 100 miles in between and just show up in a matter of seconds. So he believes that they go through portals. He even has gone as far as saying on one of my shows that he thinks that they might even be alien, some of them. So you're talking about a man that went from flesh and blood to now the woo and perhaps suggesting alien life with these things. And he's been doing this for 50 years.
Yeah. He's a
That is
changed
why
man from the
he's
Sierra
a
Sounds for
changed
sure.
person. I
Hmm.
respect him immensely, and the book is awesome. If you guys haven't bought his book, it outlines everything in that book, and yeah, I'm kind of on Rod's side with this. But that's what I was talking about earlier. If you can't change, if you're this 30-year-old stodge, old man or woman, come on, man. Time moves on, right? Time moves on.
Well,
Yep.
and Ron even brought up, I was lucky enough, he was on a podcast, and I was lucky enough to get a little airtime with him, and he was talking about when the tracks end, how and it comes around to the frequency part, that they manipulate their frequency enough that they can alter their weight so that they don't leave prints. I thought that was kind of,
And like he always says in his book, the very simple physics, mass equals energy, and energy can be transported and moved.
Yep.
See?
Anything can be explained by quantum physics.
Yes. And I tell
Anything.
you, yeah.
Anything. I can't tell you how many times he's told me that.
Yeah. Yes. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics.
Every time I see him, he's like, quantum physics. And I look at him and I'm like, quantum physics.
I got to get a t-shirt that says quantum physics.
Yes.
Brian, we're coming up on the end. Is there any final thoughts, final word you'd like to leave with us before we go, including if you have any social media you'd like to let people know about?
you know what? The only time I share these stories is actually when I go on a show, so I
Okay.
don't put them on my Facebook or anything like that.
Okay. Fair enough.
A couple links to the shows. I appreciate you having me on. Anytime I can, and I love being asked questions, because to me that makes me a better enthusiast as to what to look for and things like that when I do go out.
Well, a lot of things I say on this show and Brandy on her show is it's about learning. It's about having a great guest, having great stories. Sure, we all like the stories, but we also like the data because, without data, another great point is I always say Bigfoot crossing the road is, it's boring. Bigfoot's not boring, but we've heard that a million times. But I'm glad we have, because the more data you get, it just proves it takes us closer to finding out more about these things, is what I guess I'll say.
Right.
I know. That's why I feel like a naughty person, because I didn't write down all these notes and just pictures.
Yeah, well, a lot of times pictures, the verbiage is well, I mean, pictures are one thing, audio is another, but having a person come and speak from their experiences is the best, in my opinion. And you can tell when somebody knows what they're talking about and they're not full of bunk, as they say. So, and this was a great show, Brian. I'm going to have you back again another few months, because I know you got a lot more to talk about. I want to thank Lady in Baker becoming a new BMR Pirate R, Pamela Stefanich for a new member. Thank you. Anna Godfrey, DJ Tyler Radio, and Diane Boss for the awesome super chats. Great way to help support what we do, and it's always appreciated by each and every single one of you. If you're new here, subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube, The Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Texas Front Porch, Bart Nunley Inhumanoids. Thank you for the support, the love. We'll be back. I'll be back next week. However, we have the Blondes and Booze. Well, we got Bart Nunley Wednesday night. That's Wednesday. What is today? That was yesterday. Today's Thursday. My Lord.
Today's Thursday.
Today's Thursday.
Tonight at 8
Tonight,
p.m. Central.
Brandy's got Josh co-hosting with Krista. And who you have coming on? You have anybody coming on tonight?
Lyle Blackburn.
Yeah, Lyle Blackburn. I met the guy. He's got great, fantastic hot sauce. Fantastic hot sauce. He does. He gave me a bottle when I met him in Texas last year. So that's pretty sweet. Yeah. So.
Right. So it's going to be a good show tonight. And tomorrow night, catch us again at 7 p.m. Central or 8 in the East.
Letitia joining lately. Just came in late. Letitia, missed a fantastic show. I plugged you and Barton. So there you go. And so thanks for everybody once again. I love you all. With that being said, I got to pull a text here, look for the button, but I'm a little bit quicker than text. Just a little bit quicker.
See everybody later.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.